Next up, Socrata is going to talk to us about the open data network effect. Jessica Karsten has consulted for dozens of state and local governments at Socrata on the development of digital roadmaps and data-driven performance programs, including over 40 governments here in California. She has also stood up open data program for organizations like the World Bank and United Nations Development Program. Prior to her work at Socrata, she was a policy analyst in Washington, D.C., researching the intersection of technology and democratic state building in Africa. So please welcome Jessica Karsten.
Thanks. So first I want to say thank you to Russ and Public Sector Partners for having me, as well as Secretary Batcher and GovOps. It's wonderful to be here today and to hear all of these fantastic speakers and presenters. I'm really thrilled and honored to be a part of it, so thank you. Last night I was thinking a little bit about government transformation and about this program and how I was going to frame this and set this up. And I had a bit of a Renaissance moment. A quote, one of my favorite quotes, came to mind, and it has nothing to do with technology and innovation, but it's a quote from Marcel Proust. And he says, "The real voyage is the discovery of seeing where you are with new eyes." And so today, what I want to talk to you about is just that. Great. And so I'm going to talk to you about public policy today. So I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence or augmented reality or anything like that. I'm not going to talk about drones or about 3D printed cities or any of that exciting stuff. That's all wonderful, but I'm actually going to start with public policy. And today what we're seeing in public service is an incredible transformation. I'm going to go through three primary examples of different governments in the state of California and abroad where we're seeing them take this on. And the first point that I'm going to make is that it's not about public or private, it's about users first. So many governments today are leveraging management practices from the private sector. Many private companies are leveraging data and technology from the public sector, and it's all in the service of our users, which are residents and citizens of California in many of our cases. And so you will achieve your mission when you solve real problems and deliver delightful and modern services for your users, but many of us are not doing this yet today. Any idea how many California state websites there are? Anyone from the Department of Technology have a guess how many websites the state of California hosts? Thousands, hundreds, several thousand. Okay. So I actually don't know how many the state of California hosts, but it's probably hundreds of thousands, right? There are last year they estimated there were 40,000 government websites that the federal government hosts, each with thousands of subpages of content. Many of those web pages have had zero traffic. Not a single user has ever clicked on many of those websites. And what's sad about it is that they were developed to provide real information to users, to solve a real problem, to deliver a service. And not to mention there's a huge IT maintenance spend behind each one of those web pages. And so today, this is not unique to the US. This is a very common use case in a lot of governments, including the UK. And the UK has been brought up a couple of times today, but I love this example because they, after 15 years of self-proclaimed IT failure, they decided to start the UK Digital Service. And the concept here was that they were going to transform 25 of the most common citizen and government interactions. And they ended up saving over £15 billion in the process, which was really amazing. So creating a central access point for all users to enter government websites, to enter government services online. But the point that they make throughout this whole process is that it's not about government websites. It's about transforming government itself. It's about transforming how we think about public service and how we approach it. And the US has caught on to these successes. We've heard about USDS and 18F and groups like that today, which is fantastic, and it's a wonderful trend that we're seeing. But if we're here to transform government and not just government websites, we have to start with the raw material of government first, the building blocks, the natural resources. And that's data. And the problem with data today in government, which you've heard from many other speakers, is that it's incredibly siloed and it's hard to access. And across all the governments that I work with in the state of California, many of them have this problem as they're starting to embark on leveraging their data for performance improvement programs or citizen engagement programs. Accessing data is a real challenge. And so if we want to take advantage of this valuable resource, we have to take a platform approach. And the data as the platform model, so to speak, is using your data to create a platform that you can build all of your services on top of. That you can have app developers and web developers and folks from Code for America build tools and services on top of, or private companies can hook into to power their own tools and services. And the concept of government as a platform is not necessarily new. We saw Tim O'Reilly coin this in 2010, and I think a lot of us have learned from that and taken this approach and seen an incredible impact. But in many cases, government still has yet to adopt this approach. And so, we often feel like this, right? There's data everywhere and not a drop to drink. It surrounds us and we're drowning in it, and there's tons of data, but we're not really sure how to access it and use it. There's 40,000 websites, but delivering services is still hard. An analyst has to spend 3 weeks requesting the same bit of data for a regular report and, only to get it back in a formatted PDF. So, the power of government as a platform is that it democratizes access to government's most valuable asset, which is data. And then the public and private sectors have an equal opportunity to create best-in-breed services for our users, modern digital services. So again, it's not about public or private, but it's about the users. And once you've established your platform, it's all about creating interoperability and standards so that folks can access it. So number two, become interoperable, leverage data standards to improve access. So this is an example from the city of Los Angeles. How many folks have used the traffic mapping application Waze before? Does this look familiar? This is a really cool app. This is a Bay Area company, which is wonderful. And the city of Los Angeles has done a data sharing agreement with Waze so that the city is providing data about road closures and traffic congestion and detours and things like that to users on their smartphones as they're driving around the city of Los Angeles. And in turn, Waze users and drivers are sending data and information back to the LAPD about hit and run incidents that they're witnessing, about potholes in the streets, things like that. And so this is, in this scenario, what's amazing about it is that government is a part of every driver's experience as they're navigating the city of Los Angeles, and yet they're completely invisible. The IT infrastructure behind this is completely invisible. It's all about the user. And we saw this example a little bit earlier, but the city and county of San Francisco actually pioneered this Lives data standard that was mentioned in a previous presentation. And what's incredible about this is that we all know you don't go to a Department of Health website until after you get food poisoning, typically, unless you're like the 1% of the 1% of the OCD. And the city and county of San Francisco knew this, and so they decided to publish their data in a standard that can be consumed easily by our local startup in San Francisco, Yelp. And in turn, what they received back from citizens are these anecdotal reviews, and they look for keywords around foodborne illness and things like that, so that they can use that data to target where they send their inspectors. They're not, putting an even blanket of inspectors over the city, but they're actually more targeted in how they're delivering those services. And so, none of these use cases that these innovative cities are doing are possible without data standards. And when we have common standards, so much more innovation and advancement in our society is possible. The standards we have for communication protocols and roads and electricity are just some platform advancements in our society. And I think the next big platform advancement that we're going to see is with government data. And this is an example from the early 1900s, again, to go back, a bit of a Renaissance moment here. The only way to access electricity, electrical power for any purpose was through light sockets early on. And so, for example, if you wanted to plug in an appliance like an iron, you had to do it from the chandelier outlet above your dining room table, which is a little bit inconvenient. And that's because lighting was the first use case for electricity. But as more and more use cases for electricity came out, we had to adapt and create a standard so that more utilities could plug in. Similarly, in government, we have a closed loop of data where it's stored and maintained and housed and primarily used internal to government in a very closed way. But as we're identifying more and more opportunities to use government data, we need new ways to plug in. The next and third point is to leverage what you already have and to leverage the network. This is all about creating a culture of cooperative innovation and driving your data into distribution where it's most valuable and can have the biggest impact in our society. So like in the cases of Yelp and Waze that I talked about earlier, IT infrastructure in government is invisible to those users. They've just pushed it in to a distribution network that allows people to use it in an enjoyable and modern way. And we have the opportunity to identify new data standards as well, and it's really up to government to start thinking about what these new standards could look like. So we have this network of data which is incredible across government. There are hundreds of governments that are publishing to the Socrata platform, and we've created something called the Open Data Network, which I'm incredibly proud of. It's essentially a tool that allows every data set that's published on our platform to be accessible and open to the public. What's great about this is it gives us the opportunity not only to start identifying new standards, but to start benchmarking across cities, counties, and states, to start looking at data that's been normalized by the federal government, bringing that back in and seeing how it impacts us at a local level. And so we have an incredible opportunity together in the state of California this year. The governor and our leaders at the agency level have set amazing priorities, amazing goals for us as Californians. How do we make California the healthiest state in the nation by 2022? How do we ensure that California is ready for 50 million residents by the year 2050? How do we ensure that every child in the state of California has access to early education? These are all data-driven goals, essentially. And so, furthermore, plugging into the network will allow us to harmonize state and county level indicators so that we can start seeing how we're making investments in these areas and how we're making progress against our goals over time. So I leave you with this today, the challenge of seeing public service with new eyes, and to leverage the opportunity of government data and of digital government to make California the leader in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.